Thanks for coming to this story. It's very interesting. It has 3 parts. This is part 1. Do return for parts 2 and 3. The suburban streets of Shady Pines, New Jersey, were exceptionally quiet on a crisp October afternoon. Arthur Harrison, 71, and meticulously retired, stood in his driveway with a garden hose, washing a sedan that was already spotless. Inside the house, his wife of 45 years, Evelyn, was orchestrating her weekly masterpiece, Sunday dinner. For the Harrisons, middle-class stability wasn't just a status. It was a religion they had practiced daily to ensure their 3 children had the launch pads they never did. The front door clicked open. "Hey Ma, Dad," Marcus called out, stepping into the entryway. At 40, Marcus was the oldest, the golden standard. He carried himself with the quiet exhaustion of a man juggling a mortgage, 3 kids of his own, and a middle management job at a regional logistics firm. His wife Sarah followed him, immediately heading to the kitchen to help Evelyn with the pot roast. "You're late, Marcus," Arthur said, entering from the garage and wiping his hands on a rag. "The game starts in 20 minutes. Traffic on the turnpike, Dad. Plus, Leo had a soccer scrimmage," Marcus sighed, sinking into the plush armchair that had been his father's territory for decades. Marcus loved his parents, but stepping into this house always made him feel like he was 17 again, hiding a bad report card. Despite his college degree, his stable suburban home just 3 miles away, and his successful life, he still craved his father's rare nod of approval. At 3:15 p.m., the front door opened again, much louder this time. Maya, 36, breezed in. She was the middle child, a senior graphic designer at a boutique marketing firm, living in a stylish but increasingly expensive suburban apartment 15 minutes away. Sorry, I had to drop off some mock-ups for a client," Maya said, kissing her mother's cheek and grabbing a piece of celery from the cutting board. "Always working, Maya," Evelyn noted, her voice carrying that classic motherly blend of pride and worry. "No time for yourself. No time to meet anyone. You know Mrs. Gable's nephew just moved to the area." "Ma, please," Maya interrupted, laughing but with a sharp edge. "I'm 36, not dead. I like my apartment. I like my freedom. I don't need a setup." Maya felt the invisible pressure of the middle child. She had the degree, the career, and her independence, but in this house, the lack of a wedding ring and a suburban deed made her feel incomplete. She looked at Marcus, who gave her a sympathetic, tired smile. They loved each other, but Marcus's traditional success was the yardstick by which Maya was constantly measured. The clock struck 4 p.m. The table was set, the roast was resting, but the youngest was missing. Chloe was the baby of the family. She was brilliant, fiercely independent, and possessed a degree in environmental science that she currently used to manage a nonprofit urban garden initiative. She lived on her own in a quirky loft apartment on the edge of the county, barely scraping by, but completely content. When Chloe finally walked through the door, she brought a gust of cold autumn air and a backpack full of organic squash. "I brought side dishes," she announced. "Chloe, you're wearing flannel to Sunday dinner?" Evelyn sighed, though she immediately pulled her youngest into a fierce hug. "It's comfortable, Mom," Chloe smiled, greeting her siblings. As the family finally sat down at the dining table, the warmth of the food briefly masked the underlying tensions. Arthur cleared his throat to say grace, thanking God for a warm home, good food, and a family that all managed to stay close by. But as the platters were passed, the cracks began to show. "So, Marcus," Arthur began, cutting his meat with precision. "I heard from Bob over at your firm. He says they're restructuring. You looking at that VP position?" Marcus froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. "They are restructuring, Dad, but it's complicated. There are rumors of layoffs, actually." A heavy silence fell over the table. "Layoffs?" Evelyn whispered. "But you just bought the new SUV." "We're fine, Mom," Marcus said defensively, though his tense shoulders suggested otherwise. "If they let you go, you can always come work with me at the co-op, Mark," Chloe offered genuinely. "We need a logistics guy." "I have a mortgage and 3 kids, Chloe. I can't live on organic kale and good vibes," Marcus snapped, immediately regretting the tone. "At least she's offering," Maya chimed in, taking a defensive stance next to Chloe. "Unlike Dad, who thinks we should all be corporate vice presidents by 40. Arthur set his knife down with a soft clink that silenced the room. "I built this life so you wouldn't have to struggle. I expect you to respect the security we gave you." Evelyn walked into the room, holding Arthur's personal effects bag. She looked at her 3 children, her eyes wide with a realization she had kept to herself. "Arthur," she said softly, The insurance company just called. They said our supplemental retired employee health coverage was discontinued last month. We might have to pay for this out of pocket. The hospital bill wasn't catastrophic, but it was a jarring wake-up call. The middle-class safety net that Arthur and Evelyn had spent their lives weaving was fraying at the edges. On Saturday, the family gathered not around the dining table, but in the living room. The pretense of everything is perfect was gone. "We need to talk," Marcus said, taking the lead. He looked at his sisters, who nodded in solidarity. "All of us." Marcus went first. He confessed to his demotion and the pay cut. He explained the reality of the modern corporate squeeze. Arthur listened, his jaw tight, but for the first time, he didn't interrupt with advice. He just listened to the exhaustion in his son's voice. Maya spoke next, detailing the housing crisis she was facing. "I love my independence, but I'm paying 60% of my take-home pay just to live in a one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. It's not sustainable." Finally, Chloe spoke of her garden, not as a hobby, but as a vital community asset that was being lost because of corporate greed. Evelyn looked at Arthur, then at her children. We thought we did everything right. We sent you to college so you wouldn't have these worries." "You did do everything right, Mom," Chloe said, sitting on the arm of her mother's chair. "But the economy changed. The rules changed." It was Arthur who broke the heavy silence that followed. He looked at his hands, then up at his children. "I have a lot of pride," Arthur admitted, his voice rough. "Maybe too much. I wanted you all to be better than me. I didn't want to hear that it was hard for you, because that felt like I failed you." He looked at Marcus. "A pay cut is not a failure, son. Keeping your family afloat in a storm is what a man does. I'm proud of you." Marcus felt a weight lift off his chest that he hadn't realized he was carrying for a decade. He choked back a tear and nodded. "Now," Arthur said, his practical mind turning back on, "how do we solve this?" Over the next 3 hours, the Harrisons did what they had always done best. They organized. But this time they did it as equals, 5 college-educated adults, facing a changing world together. The housing solution. Maya would not move to a distant county. Instead, she would rent the finished garden apartment in Marcus's suburban home. It would give Maya a beautiful, affordable space, while her rent would directly offset Marcus's 15% pay cut. The land solution. Arthur, using his connections from his decades at the utility company, realized the company owned a decommissioned clean plot of land near the suburb's edge that was sitting idle. He offered to help Chloe navigate the municipal bureaucracy to secure a long-term lease for her community garden. The healthcare solution. Marcus and Maya took over managing their parents' retirement portfolios, finding a better, more modern supplemental insurance plan to protect their savings. 6 months later, the air was warm with the arrival of late spring. The family was gathered at the new location of Chloe's community garden. The soil was rich, and the first green shoots of the season were breaking through the earth. Maya was sitting on a wooden bench, sketching a new logo for the co-op on her tablet. She looked happier, less stressed, and her relationship with Marcus's kids had blossomed now that she lived just downstairs. Marcus was helping Arthur construct a new shed for the garden tools. He was still working hard, but the crushing weight of having to carry the entire suburban dream on his back alone had dissipated. Evelyn walked around, handing out cups of sweet tea. She stopped next to Arthur and Marcus. "You missed a nail, Arthur," she joked. "I did not," Arthur protested, though he smiled, handing the hammer to Marcus. "Here, son, you finish it. Your alignment is better than mine anyway." Marcus took the hammer, looked at his father, his mother, and his sisters working together in the afternoon sun. The middle-class dream hadn't ended. It had simply evolved from an individual race into a relay sport. And for the first time in years, everyone in the Harrison family felt like they were winning.
Part 2. Update 2. Chloe bought a house.
The Sunday afternoon sun pooled across the manicured lawn of Andre's suburban home, casting long shadows against the polished hardwood of the living room. At 40, Andre was the anchor of the family, the eldest sibling who carried himself with a quiet, grounding stability. He leaned against the kitchen counter, swirling a glass of iced tea as he watched his 2 younger sisters interact. Maya, 36, sat at the dining table with her laptop open, half checking her work emails and half listening to Chloe. Maya was the emotional detective of the trio, intuitive, fiercely loyal, and fiercely protective of family unity. Across from her sat 32-year-old Chloe, the baby of the family, radiating an ambitious energy that kept her constantly looking toward her next major life milestone. The three had grown up close, but as adults living within 10 minutes of each other in the leafy, quiet suburbs outside the city, their dynamic had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Yet today, there was a subtle tension under the surface, a lingering topic that none of them had fully unpacked until now. "So," Andre started, his voice rich and deep, setting his glass down, "word on the street is Brandon's been doing well for himself lately." Chloe sighed softly, adjusting the silver watch on her wrist. "He is. He opened that new financial consultancy firm downtown, and it's actually thriving." "That's a big shift from what people used to say about him," Maya observed, turning her attention away from her screen. "When you two first started seeing each other, everyone had an opinion about his past, the party lifestyle, the questionable crowd, all the rumors." "They were just rumors," Chloe replied briskly, though her tone lacked conviction. "Or at least most of it was in his past. Brandon completely turned his life around. He's focused, prosperous, and built a legitimate, meaningful career from the ground up." "And yet," Andre noted, eyebrow raised slightly, "you don't sound like a woman head over heels." Chloe didn't answer right away. The truth was, Brandon had offered her complete devotion, unwavering loyalty, and steady friendship. He had put his old reputation behind him to become a man of substance. But despite his transformation, Chloe's heart simply wasn't in it. She had entered the relationship hesitant, weighed down by those early rumors, and as time went on, she realized Brandon's newfound stability wasn't what ignited her spirit. Her attention had quietly drifted to someone else, a sharp-witted, aloof associate from her corporate network. Unfortunately for Chloe, that interest was entirely one-sided. He wasn't intrigued by her in the slightest. Still, the distraction had effectively killed whatever lingering spark remained between her and Brandon. While Chloe's romantic interest in Brandon faded into indifference, Maya had found herself forming a genuinely warm connection with him over the previous months. It wasn't romantic. Neither of them had ever crossed a line or even considered it, but rather a bright, natural friendship built on mutual respect and shared humor. They would bump into each other at local community events or chat casually whenever Brandon came by to visit the family. Maya appreciated his honesty and his drive, while Brandon found in Maya a compassionate sounding board who treated him without judgment regarding his past. "He's a good guy, Chloe," Maya said gently, looking at her younger sister. "He really gave you his best." "I know he did," Chloe said candidly, shrugging her shoulders. "Brandon is great. He really is. But good on paper doesn't always mean good for me. I'm not going to pretend to be amused or satisfied with something just because it looks right from the outside." "Fair enough," Andre chimed in, walking over to pat Chloe on the shoulder. "If it's not for you, it's not for you. But what is for you right now is this big move you've been teasing us about. Are you going to spill the news or keep us waiting?" A genuine triumphant smile broke across Chloe's face, instantly replacing the lingering conversation about her love life. "I signed the final papers this morning," Chloe announced, leaning back with a proud sparkle in her eye. 4 bedrooms, 3 full baths, sitting on a quarter-acre lot in the new West Ridge development. Andre let out a low whistle, while Maya gasped, rising to hug her sister. "A 4-bedroom house at 32? Maya exclaimed. "Chloe, that's huge. I told you both I was working toward something real," Chloe said, her confidence fully restored. "It's got high ceilings, an open kitchen layout, and a backyard big enough for family cookouts. My realtor fought hard for the closing terms, but it's officially mine." "I'm proud of you, little sister," Andre said warmly, his eyes filled with pride. "You set your mind on a goal, you saved your money, and you pulled it off."
Part 3. Update 3. Maya spotted Chloe boyfriend Brandon with a PYT.
For the rest of the afternoon, the 3 siblings celebrated Chloe's major achievement, reviewing photos of the exterior structure and discussing her vision for the space. But under the celebration, Maya couldn't help but feel a slight pang of sympathy for Brandon, wondering how he was coping with Chloe's silent emotional exit from his life. A few days later, Maya was visiting a close friend who lived in an upscale multi-story residential complex near the suburban town center. After a pleasant lunch, Maya stepped out onto the second-floor outdoor walkway, taking in the afternoon air while walking toward the stairwell. As she glanced down toward the courtyard below, her eyes locked onto a familiar silhouette walking out toward the parking deck. It was Brandon. Maya paused mid-step, leaning slightly over the railing. Walking closely beside Brandon was a stunning African-American woman with a radiant, light-complexioned glow. She was dressed impeccably in a crisp navy blue pantsuit, tailored to perfection, paired with a bright white collared shirt that extended neatly down to her wrists. Her dark, sleek hair fell smoothly to her shoulders, framing a face with a dazzling bright smile and flawless white teeth. She carried an air of effortless sophistication, striking, confident, and undeniably gorgeous. Maya stared in sheer disbelief, carefully ensuring she remained out of their direct line of sight. Brandon was laughing at something the woman said, looking lighter and happier than Maya had seen him in months. Before Maya could make sense of what she was witnessing, the couple headed toward a sleek modern sedan parked down below. Impulse took over. Maya hurriedly jogged down the stairs to the ground level, keeping her distance as she pushed through the exit doors. She reached her own car, started the ignition, and pulled out onto the main road, maintaining a discreet distance behind Brandon's vehicle as it navigated through the suburban traffic. Where are they going? Maya thought, her heart racing. Who is she? The sedan eventually pulled into the parking lot of a high-end suburban supermarket. Maya immediately navigated toward the back aisle of the lot, parking behind a large delivery van, where her vehicle was entirely concealed from view. Through her windshield, Maya observed the two getting out of the car. The mystery woman adjusted her navy suit jacket, her bright smile lighting up the conversation as Brandon opened the door for her. Maya hesitated, holding her phone tightly in her hands. Should I call Chloe right now? Should I take pictures? Is this even my business? Her instinct to protect her sister won out over her hesitation. Holding up her smartphone through the tinted glass of her windshield, Maya snapped a few quick, clear photos of the two, walking side by side toward the market entrance. Brandon gently reached out, taking the woman's hand in his as they shared a warm, private joke. They walked in together, completely absorbed in each other's presence. Giving them a 2-minute head start, Maya slipped out of her car, grabbed her purse, and walked inside the supermarket. The cool air of the produce section hit her as she scanned the wide, polished aisles. She kept a cautious distance, ducking into adjacent aisles whenever she caught a glimpse of the navy suit. It was clear from their interactions that this was not a professional business meeting. There was an undeniable ease, warmth, and genuine chemistry between them. Maya tracked them up to the checkout registers. She stood a couple of registers back, behind a tall display of magazines, watching intently. At the cashier station, the elegant young lady was systematically packing grocery bags into the shopping cart, placing organic produce and wine bottles inside with practiced ease. But as Maya scanned the area around the cart, Brandon was nowhere to be found. Maya stepped out from behind the display, desperately looking left and right down the front promenade of the store. Looking for me? A familiar, smooth voice spoke directly behind her shoulder. Maya jumped, spinning around to find Brandon standing just 2 feet away, holding 2 bottles of chilled sparkling water, a calm and knowing smile on his face. Brandon, Maya gasped, clutching her purse to her chest. She quickly composed herself, crossing her arms as her protective sisterly instincts flared. My brother, tell me what is going on here. Brandon looked at her without a trace of guilt or defensiveness. His expression was steady, clear, and surprisingly at peace. Your sister told me straight out that she has moved on, Brandon replied calmly. She made it clear she didn't see a future with me, and that her heart wasn't in it. So, I took her at her word, I cut my losses, and moved on to someone hotter and sexier. Maya blinked, momentarily stunned by his blunt honesty. That was so quick, Brandon. It's barely been any time. When a door closes cleanly, Maya, there's no sense standing in the hallway waiting for a breeze, Brandon said with a light, easy smile. I offered Chloe my absolute best, loyalty, effort, and love, and she didn't want it. I'm not going to sit around mourning a relationship that only one of us was invested in. Maya opened her mouth to argue, but the sheer logic and dignity in his stance caught her off guard. As she turned her head slightly toward the cashier line, she saw the young lady turning around, holding the handles of the shopping cart. Even from a few yards away, Maya couldn't help but notice the woman's striking presence up close. Her face lit up with a beautiful, radiant smile as she caught Brandon's eye, exuding a warm, vibrant confidence that felt completely refreshingly real. Brandon nodded warmly toward Maya. It's good seeing you, Maya. Truly, I'll always have respect for you and your family, but I'm living my life now. He walked over to his companion, gracefully taking the cart from her hand as they walked out into the afternoon sunshine together. Meanwhile, across town at the site of the new 4-bedroom home, Chloe was standing in the middle of her expansive sun-like kitchen area. She was flanked by her primary contractor, a tall man in work boots holding a binder full of material samples and architectural schematics. Blueprints were unrolled across a temporary folding table in the center of the room. "So, for the kitchen cabinetry," the contractor was saying, pointing to a swatch, "we can go with the solid espresso maple, or we can look at the soft-close white shaker style with brass hardware." "White shaker," Chloe said without hesitation, marking the page with a sticky note. "And I want the quartz countertops with the subtle gray veining." "What about the flooring upstairs?" "We have the premium plush carpet options for the 4 bedrooms and the wide plank hardwood for the main hallway," he explained, flipping the page. "We also need to finalize the solid core doors and the matte black deadbolt locks for the exterior entryways." Chloe nodded intently, engrossed in every detail. She was in her element, building her future, making decisions on her own terms, and turning this massive property into a reflection of her personal success. An hour later, Chloe returned to her suburban apartment to finish packing up her belongings. As she was taping up a box of kitchenware, the front door unlocked, and Maya walked in, her purse slung over her shoulder and a look of intense news written across her face. "Chloe," Maya said immediately, closing the door behind her. "We need to talk." Chloe didn't stop taping the box. "What's up? Did Andre call about Sunday dinner?" "No. I saw Brandon today." Chloe paused for a second, then continued smoothing down the packing tape. "Oh yeah? Where?" "At the shopping center near Sarah's apartment complex," Maya said, pulling out her phone and setting it on the counter. "Chloe, he was with someone, a stunning light-skinned woman, navy blue suit, radiant smile, completely drop-dead gorgeous. They were holding hands, grocery shopping, looking like a full-blown couple." Maya waited for the reaction, the shock, the anger, or at least a hint of jealousy. Instead, Chloe simply pulled another piece of tape from the roll. "I even confronted him in a store," Maya continued, leaning over the counter. "I asked him what was going on, and do you know what he told me? He said, 'Your sister moved on, so I cut my losses and moved on to someone hotter and sexier.'" Chloe let out a short, light laugh, shaking her head as she stood up straight. "Good for him," Chloe said calmly, walking over to the dining table to pick up her interior design catalog. Maya frowned in utter confusion. "Good for him? Chloe, did you hear what I said? It hasn't even been that long, and he's completely moved on." Chloe looked at her sister with total composure, her expression entirely unbothered. "Maya, I told you before. Brandon is a great guy, but he wasn't my guy," Chloe explained, her voice level and pragmatic. "I wasn't feeling it, my heart wasn't in it, and I wasn't going to hold on to a man just out of pride. He deserves someone who appreciates him, and I deserve to focus on what actually matters to me." She opened the catalog, placing a sample swatch of ceramic tile against a paint card. "Right now, my priority is this 4-bedroom house," Chloe continued, with a slight, satisfied smile. "I have cabinetry to finalize, carpets to select, tiles to choose, and new locks to put on my doors. Brandon is living his life, and I'm living mine. There's no hard feelings." Maya looked at her younger sister for a long moment. The initial rush of sisterly drama slowly evaporated, replaced by a quiet realization. Chloe was truly, genuinely unfazed. She had closed that chapter of her life with zero regret, entirely focused on constructing her independent future, brick by brick. Sensing the peace in the room, Maya let out a soft laugh of her own, walking over to join Chloe at the table. "All right then," Maya said, pulling up a chair and looking over the catalog pages. "Show me these tiles you're picking out for the master bath." Chloe smiled brightly, turning the page as the two sisters dived into planning the layout of the brand new house.
The marriage was only 8 months old, still wrapped in the fresh ink of the registry and the lingering scent of wedding lilies. But the tension in their open-concept kitchen was sharp enough to slice glass. Elena stood by the island, double-checking her silver hoop earrings in the reflection of her phone screen. Marcus was across the room, casually adjusting his cufflinks. "So just to be clear," Marcus said, his voice deceptively smooth, "you're heading out to the Grand Hyatt with Cheryl?" "Marcus, we talked about this in October," Elena sighed, slipping her phone into her clutch. "Cheryl asked me back in September if she could be my plus one. Her breakup was brutal, and the party has an open bar and a live band. I couldn't say no to her." "Right, September." Marcus nodded, a faint, dangerous smile playing on his lips. 8 months married, And I'm bummed for the best friend. Good. Great. In that case, you're not coming to mine either. I'm taking someone else. Elena paused, a laugh bubbling up from her throat. She spun around, leaning against the counter. Who? She asked, amused. Your office help? Actually, yes, Marcus replied, looking straight at her. Elena's laugh cut short, though she forced a smirk. Baby, you're self-employed. You don't have staff. You share a co-working space. Yes, I do, Marcus countered smoothly, stepping closer to adjust his jacket in the mirror. And the office attendant, the woman who handles the floor reception, is easily the hottest woman in that building, on the entire 12 floors. The words hit Elena like a sudden drop in temperature. A sharp, ugly spike of insecurity crept into her subconscious. Marcus wasn't a jealous man by nature, but he was competitive, devastatingly charming, and fully aware of his own appeal. She knew the co-working space he rented on Fifth Avenue. She'd seen the effortlessly stunning women floating around those modern glass suites. Elena cleared her throat, suddenly feeling very conscious of her fitted velvet dress. Well, I won't be staying long at my office party anyway, she muttered, aiming for nonchalance. I'll probably be out by 8 or 9 o'clock. Marcus didn't press the victory. He knew his wife. Elena was drop-dead gorgeous, a striking presence with effortless grace that drew eyes the second she walked into any room. He knew full well that at her corporate gala tonight, men and women alike, from low-level associates to senior partners, would be vying for her attention. He had warned her months ago about the subtle politics and flirtations of her firm's executive circle. He trusted her completely, but he also knew how to drop an anchor in her mind so she wouldn't forget who she was coming home to. What time does your thing start again? Elena asked, her eyes darting toward the front door where Marcus's coat lay. 7 sharp, he replied calmly. Same as yours. Elena glanced out the window toward the driveway. Earlier that afternoon, she had watched Marcus loading the trunk of his SUV with heavy crates, top-shelf bourbon, vintage champagne, and cases of rich red wine. She had also overheard him confirming a massive order with a high-end Caribbean caterer, jerk lamb chops, savory pepper shrimp, rum-glazed plantains, and warm codfish fritters. He wasn't just attending a party. Marcus was hosting the main event for his entire entrepreneurial floor, and he was doing it in style. The silence between them stretched, thick with unspoken bets and quiet anticipation. 8 or 9, huh? Marcus murmured, stepping up to her and kissing her softly on the cheek. Have fun with Cheryl, babe. Don't rush on my account. As his car pulled out of the driveway, Elena looked at her dress in the mirror. The excitement for her corporate gala had suddenly vanished, replaced by an urgent, ticking clock in her head. Marcus caught her eye from across the polished floor. Excusing himself from a small circle of tech founders, he picked up 2 fresh glasses of vintage champagne and strolled over, his stride slow, deliberate, and entirely unbothered. Well, Marcus said, checking his watch with a sly grin. 8:45. Look at you, keeping your word. Elena didn't bother trying to play it cool. She stepped right into his space, sliding her hands up the lapels of his sharp tailored jacket, ignoring Cheryl's muffled, amused cough behind her. You set me up, she murmured, looking up at him. I have no idea what you mean, Mrs. Sterling, Marcus replied, handing her a glass while winking at Cheryl. I just promised a good party. That woman at the reception desk, Elena whispered, tilting her head slightly toward the 5'5" Model S attendant who was currently laughing with a group near the bar. You knew exactly what you were doing when you brought her up this afternoon. Marcus's laughter was warm and low, rumbling against her fingertips. Nadia? She's great. Runs the entire floor's operations like a clockwork engine. But... He leaned in, his lips brushing against Elena's ear, his tone shifting into something deep and fiercely genuine. She's not the one I spent 8 months learning how to build an empire for. A warm flush spread across Elena's chest, completely washing away the last remnants of doubt. She glanced back around the room, at the bustling crowd, the laughing security guards down in the lobby, the empty cases of top-shelf wine, and the undeniable air of success permeating every inch of the 12 floors. Cheryl tapped Marcus on the shoulder, holding out her glass. Marcus, I owe you an apology for stealing your wife tonight, but honestly, You just won Christmas. No hard feelings, Cheryl. Marcus chuckled, clinking his glass against hers. Just make sure you give her back by 9. Oh, she's all yours, Cheryl laughed, raising her hands in defeat. I'm gonna go get some more of those jerk lamb chops before they disappear. As Cheryl slipped away toward the buffet, Marcus wrapped his arm around Elena's waist, pulling her flushed against his side. Elena rested her head against his shoulder, her heart fuller than had been all year. She had come here expecting a point to prove, but she was leaving with something far better. Absolute certainty in the man she had married, and the incredible future they were building together. Elena took a deep breath as her car glided into the underground parking garage beneath Marcus's high-rise building. Guided by a floor attendant, she parked in a reserved space near the subterranean elevator bank. When the metal door slid open, she stepped inside and pressed 12, but the lift paused almost immediately at the ground level. As the doors opened, Elena caught a glimpse of the building's night security detail, sitting around a draped table, laughing and piling their plates high with steaming jerk lamb, savory pepper shrimp, and golden plantains, alongside chilled bottles of champagne. "How's the food?" Elena asked, leaning forward with a curious smile. One of the guards swallowed, wiped his mouth, and gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up. "Ma'am, your husband catered the best spread this building has seen in 10 years. The elevator doors slid shut again, carrying Elena swiftly up to the top floor. When the doors parted on the 12th story, Elena stepped out into a softly lit, base-filled reception hall and froze. Right in her line of sight stood a woman who looked like she'd stepped off a Parisian runway. Standing around 5'5" with sleek, low-cropped dark hair, effortless posture, and striking features, she moved through the room with radiant confidence. That's her, Elena thought instantly, a sharp knot forming in her stomach. The office attendant. She looked around the sprawling floor. Marcus hadn't just thrown a casual get-together. He had transformed the entire floor into an opulent celebration. The hum of conversation, the music, the top-tier catering, and the sheer crowd of professionals enjoying themselves brought everything crashing back into perspective for Elena. She remembered when all of this was just late-night talk across their small kitchen table. Marcus pacing the floor, passionately describing a vision of building a legacy from the ground up. Back then, she had listened to him speak endlessly about scaling his business, but she hadn't fully grasped what he was truly constructing until tonight. He had sacrificed sleep, comfort, and safety to build something real, all completely legitimate, clean, and built on sheer grit and strategy. He wasn't involved in anything shortcut-driven, immoral, or unethical. He was simply a relentless builder. Elena, a sharp tap on her shoulder broke her train of thought. Elena turned to see Cheryl, who had followed her after they left the corporate gala early, holding 2 fresh glasses of sparkling wine. "Did Marcus do all of this?" Cheryl asked, her eyes wide as she scanned the bustling 12th floor event. "Yes," Elena said, her voice filled with quiet pride. "He did." Cheryl shook her head, thoroughly impressed. "Damn, girl. For a man with no family fame or flashy inheritance to lean on, he is clearly going places." Elena's initial doubts melted away entirely. Looking across the room where Marcus stood, effortlessly holding court with a group of colleagues, she smiled from ear to ear. Marcus caught her eye from across the polished floor. Excusing himself from a small circle of tech founders, he picked up 2 fresh glasses of vintage champagne and strolled over, his stride slow, deliberate, and entirely unbothered. Well, Marcus said, checking his watch with a sly grin. 8:45. "Look at you, keeping your word." Elena didn't bother trying to play it cool. She stepped right into his space, slided her hands up the lapels of his sharp tailored jacket, ignoring Cheryl's muffled, amused cough behind her. "You set me up," she murmured, looking up at him. "I have no idea what you mean, Mrs. Sterling," Marcus replied, handing her a glass while winking at Cheryl. "I just promised a good party." "That woman at the reception desk," Elena whispered, tilting her head slightly toward the 5'5" Model S attendant, who was currently laughing with a group near the bar. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you brought her up this afternoon." Marcus's laughter was warm and low, rumbling against her fingertips. "Nadia? She's great. Runs the entire floor's operations like a clockwork engine. But..." He leaned in, his lips brushing against Elena's ear, his tone shifting into something deep and fiercely genuine. She's not the one I spent 8 months learning how to build an empire for. A warm flush spread across Elena's chest, completely washing away the last remnants of doubt. She glanced back around the room, at the bustling crowd, the laughing security guards down in the lobby, the empty cases of top-shelf wine, and the undeniable air of success permeating every inch of the 12 floors. Cheryl tapped Marcus on the shoulder, holding out her glass. "Marcus, I owe you an apology for stealing your wife tonight, but honestly, you just won Christmas." "No hard feelings, Cheryl," Marcus chuckled, clinking his glass against hers. "Just make sure you give her back by 9. "Oh, she's all yours," Cheryl laughed, raising her hands in defeat. "I'm going to go get some more of those jerk lamb chops before they disappear." As Cheryl slipped away toward the buffet, Marcus wrapped his arm around Elena's waist, pulling her flush against his side. Elena rested her head against his shoulder, her heart fuller than it had been all year. She had come here expecting a point to prove, but she was leaving with something far better. Absolute certainty in the man she had married, an incredible future they were building together. As they walked toward the elevators, hand in hand, the high-rise was finally settling into quiet. They were the last to leave, the remaining music drifting away into the silent glass corridors. Marcus gave a warm nod to the night security team, who were still singing the praises of the food, and guided Elena out to the car. Settling into the passenger seat, Elena looked over at her husband as he started the engine. She couldn't help but reflect on how many people in her circle had questioned her choice. Before they were married, friends and distant relatives had dropped subtle, skeptical hints. Marcus didn't wear designer labels with giant logos, didn't drive flashy sports cars, and didn't frequent pretentious upper-class lounges where high society paraded their wealth. To the untrained eye, he lived a remarkably simple, understated life. They thought Elena was making a huge mistake, trading stability for someone who had no visible luxuries to prove his worth. They had no idea that Marcus's simplicity wasn't a lack of resources. It was discipline. He didn't waste capital on illusions. He invested every dollar into building real, lasting substance. Marcus reached over, gently placing his hand on hers as he pulled onto the quiet city streets. "I have a surprise for you," he said softly, a subtle smile touching his lips. "We're relocating." Elena turned to him, surprised. "Relocating? When?" "Starting tonight," Marcus replied, glancing at her. "It's just 40 minutes outside the city, somewhere I know you're going to fall in love with. It's a quiet townhouse community. You'll have great neighbors close by, beautiful green space, but total privacy." Elena looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. "Marcus, when did you buy a townhouse?" "I've been working on it for the last 6 months," he admitted smoothly. "While everyone thought I was just running around the city stressed, I was securing our real foundation. No more renting, no more co-working constraints. A place that's entirely ours." As the city lights faded into the rearview mirror, Elena leaned back into her seat and smiled to herself. The naysayers had looked for flashy evidence of a luxury life, but Marcus had been quietly building an empire from the ground up, and she was riding right beside the man who owned it all.
Plan for them.
The tropical sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the church in Kingston, casting vibrant shades of ruby and gold across the pews. Catherine smoothed down her tailored Sunday dress, her breath lingering for a second as she caught her reflection in the glass of her phone screen. At 33, Catherine was an absolute powerhouse. She was one of the sharpest corporate attorneys in Jamaica, commanding every courtroom she stepped into. On top of that, she was drop-dead gorgeous, possessing the sculpted, vibrant physique of a 25-year-old and an undeniable presence that turned heads everywhere. But that beauty was often a double-edged sword. In the legal fraternity, men made subtle, distasteful comments, whispering behind closed doors that her rapid accolades were linked to her looks rather than her brilliant mind. Offers for one night were veiled under corporate dinners and late-night debriefs, deeply offending her integrity. Her Christian faith and her personal principles kept her guarded. She constantly fought a mental tug-of-war, wanting intimacy and partnership, yet watching her colleagues navigate messy, toxic, and unfaithful relationships. She refused to compromise her standards,
leading her to erect a fortress around her heart. Until Kevin walked up to her after service. Kevin, 35, was grounded, observant, and possessed a quiet confidence that didn't need to shout. He approached her discreetly near the church garden, away from prying eyes. "Catherine," he said, holding her gaze calmly. "I'd like to take you out on a date in 3 months' time. But it comes with 3 options, depending on where we end up. Option 1, breakfast. Option 2, dinner. Option 3, ice cream. I won't tell you the locations yet." Catherine raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the sheer oddity and boldness of the proposition. "There are only 2 rules," Kevin continued. "You can't tell anyone about this whether you say yes or no, and if it makes you feel more comfortable, you're free to bring a friend along." Catherine looked him up and down, taking in his relaxed posture and neat attire. She felt a subtle smirk tugging at the corner of her lips, though she carefully softened it. She never wanted to make a man feel small or unworthy. "I'll think about it," she said, leaning against the wooden railing. "But first, answer me this, and don't lie to me." "Okay," Kevin said. "How much pickney you have?" she asked directly. "None," he responded without hesitation. "How old are you?" 35. "Ooh, no," Catherine scoffed gently, shaking her head. 35 and no children? So you want to add me to your list of gal dem and make me your first baby mother? Kevin chuckled softly, his eyes steady. "No. I don't have a list of women, and I don't intend to start one. But it seems like the faithful ones like me just get what the duck gets. Just think about it, like you said." They exchanged numbers right there, and Kevin gave her a polite nod before turning to walk away. 1 week passed. Then a month. Then 2. With every passing Sunday, Kevin was getting restless. He saw her at church from afar, looking as radiant as ever, but her phone remained silent. He began to wonder if he had misjudged her interest entirely. Then, on the exact date marking the 3rd month, his phone rang. Kevin answered immediately. "On the 3rd month you decide to call? I almost forget about you," he teased, though his heart beat a little faster. "So why didn't you ask someone else?" Catherine replied smoothly over the line, a hint of playfulness in her voice. "I don't know," Kevin admitted honestly. "Anyways. Are we still on if I choose any option?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "Okay. I choose option number 1. Breakfast." "Okay," Kevin said, pausing for a moment before continuing. "But you buy the ingredients, and I will reimburse you when I get there." Catherine paused, a bit startled by the request. Before she could process it, Kevin asked another question. "Can you eat ice cream?" "Yes," she said slowly, utterly bewildered. "Good. Please buy your favorite kind too, and I'll reimburse you for that as well." Silence stretched across the line. Catherine remained completely speechless on the phone, her mind racing through a dozen legal and personal theories, trying to figure out what kind of man asks a woman to buy her own breakfast ingredients and ice cream for a first date, and what on earth he had planned for them. A Saturday morning in Kingston. The location pin landed on Kevin's phone late Friday night, leading to a quiet, tree-lined complex inn. Before the morning sun could even peek over the blue mountains, Kevin rolled up to the security gate in the crisp, cool air of dawn. Catherine's 3-bedroom townhouse was remarkable, modern, spacious, and flooded with natural light as the early sky began to shift from midnight blue to soft orange. She greeted him at the door in a silk robe, still half asleep, and pointed him toward the kitchen. She showed him the food basket on the counter and the fully stocked refrigerator containing everything she had bought as requested, before heading back upstairs to get ready. "I have a friend staying over, by the way," Catherine called out over the mahogany banister, a subtle test in her voice to see if it would throw him off. "No problem at all," Kevin called back smoothly, pulling up his sleeves. "Breakfast will be ready for 2. Upstairs, Catherine took her time getting dressed, putting on a fitted linen dress and letting her hair down. She walked over to her guest room and knocked on the door. "Come on," she told her friend, a fellow attorney who had stayed over after a late night of reviewing case files. "We're going downstairs. Kevin is making us breakfast." Her friend blinked, thoroughly confused. "Wait. The mystery church guy is downstairs cooking right now?" When the two women walked down the stairs into the kitchen area, they stopped dead in their tracks. The dining table was set with exquisite care. The spread laid out before them was immaculate, an unending showcase of classic Jamaican morning comfort, freshly cooked and steaming hot. Jamaican staples, golden fried plantains, tender steamed fish cooked with okras and peppers, seasoned callaloo and saltfish, crispy golden fry dumplings, and a rich dish of national pride, ackee and saltfish. Warm starters, 2 small bowls of freshly blended oatmeal porridge sprinkled with cinnamon and nutmeg. Beverages, 2 medium glasses of ice-cold, fresh squeezed orange juice. "You made all of this?" her friend whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the vibrant spread. "Every bit of it," Kevin smiled warmly, pulling out their chairs for them. While Catherine and her friend sat down, overwhelmed by the incredible spread, the rich, savory aroma of cooking had already drifted past the back patio and into the courtyard. Before they could even take their first bite, a polite knock echoed at the door. It was Catherine's neighbor from next door, drawn in entirely by the scent floating through the morning air. Kevin excused himself to answer the door with a friendly smile, assuring the neighbor that a warm meal was underway. Returning to the stove, he checked on the Saturday soup pot he had started for later in the day. Knowing how much most women love sweet corn in a rich soup, he had dropped in 3 thick slices of corn to simmer alongside the pumpkin and yellow yam. Seeing that the initial pot was far too small for the flavor brewing inside, Kevin calmly transferred everything into a larger stockpot, tossing in extra scallion, thyme, Scotch bonnet, and fresh garlic to stretch the broth. By the time Catherine and her friend finished their feast, completely blown away by both the taste and the gesture, they looked toward the kitchen counter. There wasn't a single pot out of place, no spice spill on the granite, and no dirty dish in the sink. The entire kitchen had been wiped down and thoroughly cleaned, leaving behind only the pleasant, simmering aroma of the Saturday soup. Catherine stood by the counter, holding her glass of orange juice, looking at Kevin with a mix of awe and complete fascination. "Mr. Kevin," she said quietly, a genuine smile breaking across her face for the first time in months. "I think you have some explaining to do about this whole date." Kevin took a gentle sip of his tea, wiping his hands on a napkin before looking up at Catherine and her friend with a sincere smile. "Oh, before I forget, you both smell lovely by the way," he added warmly. "I love the fragrances." Catherine couldn't help the light blush that rose to her cheeks, while her friend beamed, completely charmed. But by the time Sunday rolled around, word had already begun to spread through Catherine's circle like wildfire. A man cooking a 5-star feast for Jamaica's most elusive female attorney before sunrise? It sounded like a fable. Rumors rippled through her upscale neighborhood and echoed down the polished hallways of her law firm. Some assumed she had hired a high-end private chef to cater her morning. Catherine immediately shut the gossip down with icy precision. He was not hired, she told a group of whispering colleagues in the lounge, her voice carrying absolute authority. And cooking isn't even his profession. Within days, subtle chatter drifted back to Kevin's ears. People were whispering about his hidden culinary talent, claiming he was using extravagant meals to try and seduce the famous lawyer. Kevin simply shook his head and dismissed the nonsensical noise. He knew who he was and what his intentions were. Then, midweek, Catherine called him. "Kevin? My neighbor, the one who smelled the breakfast on Saturday, is hosting a barbecue this coming weekend," she explained, her tone light and friendly. "She begged me to invite you." Kevin hesitated. High society suburban barbecues were not his social circle, and every instinct warned him to decline. But hearing the hopeful warmth in Catherine's voice, he couldn't bring himself to disappoint her. Against his better judgment, he gave in. "All right," he sighed softly. "I'll be there." Yet, the moment he hung up the phone, an unshakable sense of discomfort settled in his chest. On the day of the barbecue, Kevin arrived at the complex early to get his bearings. Walking quietly along the stone pathway near the garden wall, he paused when he heard familiar voices coming from the patio behind the hedge. It was the host talking to another neighbor. "Why on earth did you invite him?" the second woman scoffed softly. "You know Andre was dying to come today just to try and get a chance with Kathy." "Girl, relax," the host replied with a dismissive chuckle. "I only invited him because the man can clean up quickly. Kathy told me that before they even finished eating breakfast, her whole kitchen was spotless. We need somebody around to clear the grill and wash up after." The words hit Kevin like a cold bucket of water. Without a sound, he tiptoed backward down the pathway, turned around, and walked straight out of the gated complex. He got into his car and drove home, his jaw set, refusing to be turned into anyone's convenient hired hand. The next day, Kevin picked up his phone and dialed Catherine. "Good morning, Catherine," he said, keeping his tone calm, measured, and impeccably polite. "I'm calling to let you know that I am no one's help. I won't be attending the barbecue, nor will I be stepping into that environment." Catherine was taken aback by the sudden firmness in his voice. "Kevin, what happened?" "My neighbor said she looked everywhere for you yesterday, but couldn't find you." "I know," Kevin said quietly. Catherine, blessed with keen discernment both in the courtroom and in life, sensed immediately that something deeper had transpired. She hadn't wanted her neighbor prying into Kevin's whereabouts, so she had covered for him smoothly on the spot, telling the woman, "He told me he had an urgent matter and had to leave on point." "Someday, I'll explain it all to you," Kevin continued gently over the line. "But for now, I'm also going to cancel our ice cream date." "Cancel it?" Catherine repeated, the disappointment sharp in her chest. "Kevin, why?" "Just trust me on this one, Catherine," Kevin replied softly. "I'm canceling it." He didn't give her a single detail about the conversation he had overheard behind the hedge. He simply left the boundary firmly in place, leaving Catherine standing alone in her living room, her legal mind racing as she tried to piece together what had just shifted between them. The car was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner as Catherine put the vehicle in park near the edge of the church parking lot. She turned to face Kevin, her expression serious and resolute. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "Tell me what has been going on with all this shenanigans all around us. Don't hold anything back, I'm a big girl, I can take it." Kevin leaned back against the headrest, looking out at the sunlit trees for a moment before meeting her eyes. "All right," Kevin began calmly. "I'm going to start with both of us, because it all started with that breakfast. First of all, maybe in your excitement, you didn't realize how far people around you would take things. That friend you invited? She went around telling people I was trying to cook my way into your heart and that you turned me down. She said my chest was too high, that I was just a common cook trying to get with you, and that anyone could cook those foods." Catherine's eyes widened slightly in disbelief, but Kevin wasn't done. "Then, a few of the men at church and in your circle took deep offense to what I did," he continued smoothly. "They heard rumors through the grapevine. One brother even said if he had known what I was planning, he would have discouraged me, saying you'd just take me for granted like everyone else trying to get with you. Those brothers were all pissed with me for stepping up." Catherine listened, taking in every word as her mind processed the pettiness and jealousy brewing behind her back. She took a breath and looked at him. "I'm going to ask you one favor. Can you come and cook me dinner today?" Kevin smiled gently, shaking his head. "Sorry, I already cooked dinner for today. But I will give you a generous portion of what I made. You'll like it, I can tell you right now it's delicious. It's steamed fish, rice and peas, chicken with okra, fresh carrot juice with no sugar, soursop juice with no sugar, and both raw and steamed veggies. I cooked for myself and my sister. You're going to love it." He looked toward the church entrance. "Let me turn back here so I can go pick up my car." Catherine looked at him, a slight pout touching her lips. "You're really not coming to cook for me?" "No," Kevin said softly, giving her a reassuring look. "I won't be coming over to cook today, but I will bring you a great portion of mine. Don't be sad." The drive back to Kevin's home was quiet, but the air between them had shifted from tension to a calm, unspoken understanding. True to his word, Kevin packed generous, steaming portions of his homemade dinner into glass containers, along with 2 cold bottles of fresh carrot and soursop juices. He handed them through the car window with a quiet, genuine smile. "Eat up, Kathy," he said gently. "No sugar added, just pure goodness." Catherine took the bag, the rich aroma of steamed fish, thyme, and coconut milk instantly filling her car. That evening, as she sat at her dining table enjoying every single flavor, she couldn't remember the last time a man had nourished her without asking for anything in return. He hadn't demanded her time, hadn't tried to impress her social circle, and certainly hadn't let himself be used. He stood firm in his dignity as a faithful, self-assured man. By Tuesday, Catherine made up her mind. The mental gymnastics that had kept her single for years, the fear of being taken advantage of, the cynical views of her colleagues, the constant guarding of her heart, began to quiet down. She picked up her phone and dialed his number. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Kevin," she said softly, her voice missing its usual guarded legal tone. "You gave me 3 choices 3 months ago. Breakfast, dinner, or ice cream." "I remember," Kevin replied, his voice calm. "Option 2, Catherine said clearly. "Dinner." But this time, no rules about who buys what, no interference from neighbors, and no uninvited guests. Just you, me, and an evening away from everybody. Kevin smiled on his end of the line, feeling the shift in her spirit. "Dinner it is then, Kathy. I'll pick you up at 7 on Friday." When Friday evening arrived, Kevin pulled up to her complex. Catherine stepped out wearing an elegant, fitted navy dress, looking every bit the stunning, 33-year-old woman she was, but this time, her eyes carried a soft warmth instead of her usual courtroom armor. He took her to a quiet, breezy restaurant nestled high up in the hills overlooking the twinkling lights of Kingston. As they sat across from each other under the open sky, far away from church chatter, jealous colleagues, and nosy neighbors, Catherine realized something profound. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the need to evaluate, analyze, or defend herself. Across the table sat a man who respected his own worth just as much as he respected hers, and for Catherine, that was the greatest luxury of all. The soft, cool mountain breeze swept gently across the patio, carrying the faint, sweet aroma of night-blooming jasmine. Down below, the city of Kingston looked like a vast carpet of glimmering golden stars, far removed from the sirens, court filings, and endless noise of the hustle and bustle down in the valley. Catherine leaned back in her chair, holding her wine glass, feeling a deep, relaxing calm wash over her that she hadn't experienced in years. No corporate politics, no judgmental glares, no defensive walls. Just genuine, easy conversation. Something sparked in her mind as she looked around at the serene, tucked-away establishment. "How do you know about this place?" Kathy asked, her curiosity piqued. "It feels like a hidden sanctuary." Kevin chuckled softly, swirling the water in his glass before looking out over the city lights. "Oh yes, about that," Kevin answered with a relaxed smile. "Maybe people down there would say it's you who introduced me to a place like this up here. But it doesn't matter what they say. I deal with low-level, low-minded people all the time, so gossip doesn't move me." He paused, his eyes softening as memory settled in. "To answer your question directly, my good friend, who is also named Kevin, and I came across the owner one evening. We were just hanging out after work with nowhere particular to go, he introduced it to us so we decided to check it out. From that very day, every Friday for about 4 years, we came right here to sit and look out into Kingston." A quiet beat passed between them, and Kevin's tone grew tender. "My friend Kevin isn't doing healthy right now," he admitted quietly. "Over the years, I've seen so many people come and go from this spot, including workers who used to serve us. But this place always remained a special refuge for us." Catherine watched him carefully, deeply moved by his vulnerability and loyalty to his friend. There was no pretension in him, no fake bravado, just a grounded, faithful man who valued real relationships. She reached across the small table and gently placed her hand over his. "Thank you for sharing this place with me, Kevin," she said softly, her eyes meeting his with a warmth he hadn't seen before. "It really is a sanctuary." A waiter came over and asked if they would like to order now. "Yes," he replied, "I would like to have a soft dinner, and one to go, please. Package the one to go nicely for me, thank you." Kathy said, "I am having same dinner as his, and a soft breakfast to go," Kevin added. Trouble in paradise. The magic of the hilltop dinner dissolved into cold reality by sunrise. Despite their intention to keep the evening entirely private, word had somehow leaked into the airwaves of Kingston's rumor mill. Details that only two people should have known were suddenly circulating: the exact table they sat at, the wine they drank, what was ordered, and even the fact that Catherine had taken home the leftovers. All evidence of the leak pointed straight back to Kathy, whether through a slip of the tongue to a trusted friend or someone monitoring her social circle. Early Saturday morning, the buzz of Kevin's phone woke him from a peaceful sleep. He picked it up and saw a message from an unknown number. "Be careful who you take to dinner." Kevin read the text once. Then twice. Then a third time, his brow furrowing as the words settled into his mind. He set the phone face down on his nightstand and leaned back against his pillows, staring at the ceiling in deep reflection. He was 35 years old, grounded in his faith, and completely past the stage of juvenile drama, passive-aggressive games, and high society gossip. He had sought a mature, quiet connection, but every step toward Catherine seemed to drag him into a public spectacle created by the very environment she occupied. A heavy calm settled over Kevin. He realized he didn't have the energy or the desire for this kind of foolishness. The quiet friendship they were building, and any potential for a public relationship down the road, was simply no longer worth the constant drama. He picked up his phone, deleted the text thread, and made up his mind to draw the final line. The quiet in Kevin's apartment felt heavy, but his mind was made up. He picked up his phone and dialed Catherine's number. When she answered, her voice was warm. "Kevin? I was just thinking about..." "Kathy, listen to me," Kevin interrupted gently, his tone firm, calm, and completely void of anger. "Early this morning, I received a text from an unknown number. It said, 'Be careful who you take to dinner.'" Silence stretched over the line. "I don't know who sent it, and honestly, I don't care to find out," Kevin continued, refusing to let her interject. "What I do know is that every detail of our private evening ended up circulating among your circle: what we ordered, where we sat, who took home what. I am 35 years old, Kathy. I live a quiet, faithful life, and I have zero desire for juvenile drama, surveillance, or high society gossip." Catherine gasped softly, the reality of what her environment had done crashing down on her. "Kevin, I didn't." "I know you didn't send it," Kevin said, his voice steady with unwavering self-respect. "But I am disappointed by how this entire situation has turned out. I approached you with pure, honest intentions, but I am no one's character in a Kingston soap opera. Because of that, I am explicitly and confidently telling you that I won't be continuing or pursuing this friendship anymore. Kevin, please." Catherine pleaded quietly, a lump forming in her throat as she realized she was losing the one real, unselfish man who had crossed her path in years. "I wish you nothing but the absolute best in your career, your faith, and your life, Catherine," Kevin said softly. "Take care of yourself." Before the legal mind of Jamaica's sharpest attorney could formulate an argument, Kevin hung up the phone. He set it down on his table, took a deep breath, and walked out onto his veranda, stepping back into the peace he had built for himself, leaving the noise of her world behind for good.